There is a book sitting on a shelf somewhere in Florence, Italy. It was written in 1513 by a man who had been tortured, exiled, and politically destroyed. His name was Niccolò Machiavelli. And in the 37 chapters of The Prince, a book that would reshape how power operates for the next 500 years, he never once uses the word friendship as a virtue necessary for rulers. Not even once. He talks about alliances. He talks about utility. He talks about strategic proximity. He talks about who to crush and who to elevate based purely on what they make possible for you. But friendship, love, loyalty for its own sake, these concepts don't appear, not because Machiavelli was heartless, but because he understood something you're about to learn right now. Friendship is a civilian luxury that leaders cannot afford. You are watching this because you feel it. You feel the weight. You look at your phone and see a contact list full of names, people you call friends, people you've known for years, people you've invested in, laughed with, trusted. And somewhere deep in your gut, in a place you've been trained to ignore, you know the truth. Most of these people are anchors, not engines. They're not lifting you. They're holding you in place. But you can't say it out loud. You can't even think it clearly without feeling guilty, because you've been conditioned since birth to believe that loyalty is the highest virtue, that being a good person means never giving up on anyone, that cutting people off makes you cold, cruel, calculating. All the words society uses to shame you back into compliance. Let me tell you what those words actually mean. Cold means you have standards. Cruel means you have boundaries. Calculating means you understand cause and effect. And society wants you weak, accessible, available to everyone who demands your time, energy, and attention. Because weak people are manageable. Weak people are predictable. Weak people stay in their lane. Machiavelli was not weak. And if you're still listening, neither are you. But you need to understand why this feels so difficult. Why the idea of cutting people from your life creates a physical sensation in your chest. Why you'd rather suffocate under the weight of dead relationships than face the void of being alone. It's because you were programmed, carefully, systematically. From the moment you entered the social conditioning system we call childhood. School taught you group projects, the idea that collaboration is always superior to individual excellence. Religion taught you congregation, the belief that isolation is sin and community is salvation. Family taught you obligation, that blood ties create permanent debt regardless of what that blood actually does for you. Every institution you've ever been part of had the same message. You need people. You need the herd. You need to belong. And that message is a cage. Here's what Machiavelli knew that your guidance counselor didn't. Human beings are not inherently good. They are inherently self-interested. Every person operates from the question, what's in it for me? Even when they dress it up in altruism, even when they perform generosity, even when they claim to love you unconditionally, there is always a condition, always a calculation, always an exchange. The difference between the masses and the Machiavellian is this. The masses lie about the calculation. They pretend it doesn't exist. They perform loyalty while secretly keeping score. The Machiavellian sees the calculation clearly, accepts it as reality, and makes strategic decisions based on utility rather than sentiment. This doesn't make you evil. This makes you honest. And honesty is where power begins. Let me make this brutally simple. Your brain is a sponge. It absorbs everything around it without asking your permission. You hang out with lazy people. You become lazy. You hang out with complainers. You become a complainer. You hang out with people who think $50,000 a year is good money. You will never make 6 figures. This isn't motivation. This is biology. Your neurons don't care about your goals. They care about patterns. And right now, your patterns are being written by people who stopped growing years ago. Most people will never understand this. They'll keep their entire high school friend group well into their 30s. They'll attend birthday parties for people they don't even like. They'll respond to text messages from people who add 0 value to their lives just to be nice. And they'll wonder why they're stuck, why nothing changes, why their life feels like Groundhog Day. You're not most people. You're here because some part of you, the part that hasn't been completely domesticated by social programming, knows that something has to change. That part is right, and that part is about to get stronger. Because you're about to learn what Machiavelli learned 500 years ago. The people closest to you are either weapons in your arsenal or weights on your ankles. There is no third category. And pretending there is, that's the lie that keeps you average. Let's perform an autopsy on your social circle right now. Pull out your phone, go to your contacts, scroll slowly. For every name you see, ask yourself one question. The only question Machiavelli would ask if he were standing next to you. What does this person make possible for me? Not, are they nice? Not, have we been through things together? Not, do they make me feel good? Those are emotional metrics. We're using strategic metrics now. What does this person make possible for me? Do they expand your thinking? Do they challenge you to be better? Do they have skills, connections, or knowledge that you don't have? Do they push you when you're weak? Do they hold you accountable when you're slipping? Do they see the version of you that you're trying to become and reflect it back to you so clearly that you have no choice but to rise to it? Be honest. Most of the names in your phone do nothing for you. They're not bad people. They're not actively harming you. They're just there, taking up space, occupying mental bandwidth, creating the illusion of social connection while providing none of its actual value. And here's the trap. You think that's okay. You think neutral relationships are harmless. You've convinced yourself that as long as someone isn't draining you, they're fine to keep around. This is the lie that keeps you average. There is no neutral in relationships. Every single person in your orbit is either an asset or a liability. They are either adding to your capacity, expanding what you're capable of, what you believe is possible, what you can access, or they are subtracting from it. They are consuming your time, your energy, your attention, and even if they're consuming very little, that little bit is still a cost. Machiavelli understood this with brutal clarity. In chapter 22 of The Prince, he writes, "The first method for estimating the intelligence of a ruler is to look at the men he has around him. Not the ruler's education, not his resources, not his strategy, his circle, because your circle is not a reflection of who you are. Your circle is the blueprint for who you will become. If you are surrounded by people who celebrate mediocrity, you will produce mediocrity. If you are surrounded by people who fear risk, you will avoid risk. If you are surrounded by people who have given up on their own potential, they will unconsciously or consciously sabotage yours. This is not a theory. This is neuroscience. Your brain contains mirror neurons. These neurons fire when you observe someone else's behavior, emotions, or speech patterns. They're the biological mechanism behind empathy, learning, and social bonding. But here's what they don't teach you in psychology class. Mirror neurons don't have a filter for quality. They don't distinguish between behaviors worth copying and behaviors that will destroy you. They just copy, constantly, unconsciously, automatically. When you spend time with someone, your brain is downloading their operating system, their beliefs about what's possible, their standards for what's acceptable, their tolerance for mediocrity, their relationship with discipline, with risk, with ambition. You think you're just hanging out. Wrong. Your neurons are being reprogrammed. This is why you've heard the cliché. You're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. But let me take it deeper. It's not about their income level or their job title or their external success. It's about their standards. What do they accept as normal? What do they tolerate in themselves? What do they celebrate? And what do they condemn? If your 5 people think sleeping until 10 a.m. is self-care, you will start sleeping until 10 a.m. If your 5 people think working weekends is toxic hustle culture, you will stop working weekends. If your 5 people think ambition is arrogance, you will self-sabotage every time you try to rise. Not because you're weak, because your environment is stronger than your willpower. Machiavelli saw this play out across Italian city-states for decades. He watched princes with great potential surround themselves with flattering courtiers, comfortable advisors, and mediocre generals. And he watched those princes fall. Not because they lacked ability, because they lacked the ruthlessness to purge their circles of anyone who didn't make them more dangerous. Listen closely. Your friends are not neutral. They are either sharpening you or dulling you. They are either expanding your capacity or contracting it. And the person who doesn't drain you but doesn't help you is still stealing from you, because they're occupying space, mental real estate, calendar space, emotional energy. That could be given to someone who actually makes you better. You have 24 hours in a day. Maybe 16 of those are usable after sleep. Of those 16 hours, perhaps 4 to 6 are discretionary after work and basic survival tasks. Those 4 to 6 hours are the entire difference between who you are now and who you could become in 5 years. And you're giving them to people who contribute nothing to your transformation. That's not friendship, that's theft, and you're complicit in the crime. Let me teach you something dark, something most people don't recognize until it's too late. There's a manipulation tactic that happens in failing relationships, friendships, romantic partnerships, family dynamics. It's called the emotional hostage trade, and once you see it, you'll never unsee it. Here's how it works. You're about to make a major move, launch the business, commit to an intense training program. Enter a phase of deep focus that requires you to go dark for a while. You've communicated this. You've set boundaries. You've explained what you're doing and why. And then, like clockwork, someone in your circle has a crisis. Their relationship falls apart. They're going through something, and they really need you right now. The timing is impeccable. Always right when you're about to execute on something that would change your trajectory. Now, here's the part most people miss. This isn't always conscious. The person creating the crisis isn't sitting in a dark room plotting your destruction, but their subconscious is absolutely strategic. Because your transformation threatens the status quo. It threatens the dynamic where you're available, accessible, where you play the role they need you to play. So the subconscious deploys a crisis, real or manufactured, severe or mild. It doesn't matter. What matters is that it demands your attention at the exact moment you are about to redirect that attention toward your own growth. And here's the test. What do you do? Most people fold. They abandon their plans. They put their goals on hold. They slip back into caretaker mode, therapist mode, emotional support mode. They sacrifice their trajectory for someone else's crisis because they think that's what loyalty means. That's what being a good person means. And the person in crisis, they accept the sacrifice. They take your time, your energy, your focus. And the moment the crisis passes, and it always passes, they forget. They forget how you dropped everything. They forget how you delayed your dreams. They forget the sacrifice entirely. But you don't forget. You remember the opportunity you killed, the momentum you lost, the version of yourself you could have become if you just kept moving. Machiavelli wrote about this in chapter 17 of The Prince. Men sooner forget the death of their father than the loss of their patrimony. They will forget you helped them, but you'll never forget what you gave up to do it. So here's the counter move. The Machiavellian response to the emotional hostage trade. You acknowledge the crisis. You show appropriate concern. You offer what support you can within the boundaries you've already set. And then you proceed with your plan anyway. You don't abandon your launch to sit on their couch for 3 hours rehashing their breakup. You don't cancel your training to be their emotional dumping ground. You don't sacrifice your deep work time to manage their anxiety. You say, I hear you. This sounds difficult. I'm here for you at this designated time, but I can't change my plans. I've committed to this, and I'm following through. And then you watch what happens. If they're a real friend, an asset, someone who actually values you, they'll understand. They'll respect the boundary. They might even be inspired by your discipline. If they're a liability, someone who needs you to stay small so they don't feel left behind, they'll escalate. They'll guilt you. They'll accuse you of not caring. They'll weaponize the crisis to pull you back into orbit. And that tells you everything you need to know. The emotional hostage trade is a filter. It separates assets from liabilities with surgical precision. And the people who fail this test, they've just shown you exactly who they are. Let me tell you about 2 people, both 26 years old. Both had the same goal: build a 6-figure online business in 12 months. Same skills, same resources, same starting point, but radically different outcomes. Person A, we'll call him Marcus, had a tight circle. 5 close friends from college. They'd been through everything together: weekly hangouts, group chat, constantly active, bros for life. When Marcus told them about the business idea, they were supportive. They liked his posts. They said, "Let me know if you need anything." They genuinely wanted him to succeed. But here's what actually happened. Marcus started grinding. Weekends, evenings, early mornings. The business demanded focus. It demanded sacrifice. Every hour he wasn't working his day job, he was building. And that meant he wasn't available for the usual hangouts, the usual group activities, the usual Friday night sessions that always turned into Saturday afternoon recovery marathons. At first, the group understood. Yeah, man, get after it. We'll catch up later. But 3 weeks in, the messages started changing. Dude, You're always working now. We never see you anymore. Remember when we used to actually hang out? Then came the planning. Every time Marcus blocked off a weekend for deep work, someone planned something. A birthday, a trip, we haven't all been together in forever reunion. And every time Marcus declined, the guilt trip intensified. It's just one weekend, man. The business will still be there Monday. You're becoming obsessed with this. Don't forget what actually matters. Friendships, relationships, memories. Marcus felt it. The pull, the guilt, the voice in his head asking if maybe they were right. Maybe he was becoming unbalanced. Maybe he should take a break, show up for his people, prove he hadn't changed. So he did. He started saying yes. One weekend turned into two. Two turned into monthly obligations. The group chat demanded responses. The hangouts demanded presence. And the business? It limped along in whatever time was left over. 6 months in, Marcus had made $3,000 total. He was exhausted, resentful, and starting to believe maybe entrepreneurship wasn't for him. Maybe he wasn't cut out for it. Maybe his friends were right. Maybe balance was more important than building. Now let me tell you about person B. We'll call him Lucius. Lucius had the same circle, same friend group, same goal, same timeline. But Lucius did something different. 3 months into building his business, Lucius recognized the pattern. He saw the emotional hostage trades. He felt the guilt trips. He noticed that every time he gained momentum, something pulled him back into the group orbit. And he made a decision. He performed the friendship purge. He didn't announce it. He didn't create drama. He didn't send a manifesto to the group chat explaining his philosophy on relationships and personal growth. He just went silent, stopped responding to the group chat, let messages go unanswered for days, then weeks, declined every invitation with the same vague response. Can't make it, got some things I'm working through. No elaboration, no justification, no room for negotiation. His friends thought he was depressed. Some reached out with genuine concern. Hey man, you good? I'm worried about you. Lucius gave them nothing substantial. Thanks for checking up, I'm doing good, just focusing on my business. I'll reach out when I'm done. The group eventually stopped asking. They moved on, found other people to fill the Friday night slot, started a new group chat without him. Life continued. They barely remembered he existed. And Lucius? He worked, alone, in silence, in obscurity. No one watching, no one cheering, no one guilt-tripping him back into mediocrity. Just him and the commitment he made to himself. 12 months later, here's where they landed. Marcus had made $18,000 total from his business. Not enough to quit his job, not enough to feel like it was working. He was still in the group chat, still going to the hangouts, still hearing, maybe it's just not the right time, and at least you tried. Lucius had made $140,000. He'd built a profitable operation, quit his job, moved to a different city, transformed his entire life. And the group chat? They had no idea. He'd disappeared so completely they assumed he'd given up. Until he posted his income screenshot on LinkedIn. Then suddenly the messages flooded in. Bro, I knew you'd kill it. We should catch up. It's been forever. I always believed in you, man. Proud of you, brother. Lucius read every message, and he responded to exactly 0 of them. Because he remembered. He remembered who texted first when he went dark. He remembered who showed up when there was nothing to celebrate. He remembered who was there when the room was empty. And these people, they weren't there. They don't get to rewrite history. They don't get to insert themselves into his success story. They don't get access to the version of him they didn't help build. Same starting point, same goal, same timeline, same friend group. The only difference? One of them understood what Machiavelli knew. You cannot serve two masters. You will love one and hate the other, or you will be devoted to one and despise the other. Marcus chose the group. Lucius chose himself. The market rewarded one and ignored the other. Now ask yourself, which one are you? Let me make this even simpler, because this is where most people get stuck. You think you're being loyal by maintaining relationships that don't serve you. You're not. You're being afraid. Afraid of being alone. Afraid of what it says about you if you cut people off. Afraid that maybe you're the problem. Here's the truth. Loyalty without utility is just sentimentality. And sentimentality doesn't build empires. It doesn't transform bodies. It doesn't create financial freedom. It doesn't make you dangerous. You know what makes you dangerous? The ability to walk away from anyone who doesn't make you better. The ability to sit in an empty room and feel complete. The ability to choose your mission over their comfort every single time. That's not cold. That's powerful. And power is what we're building here. The friendship purge begins with a single realization. You owe them nothing. Read that again. You owe them nothing. Not your time, not your energy, not your presence, not your loyalty. Nothing. This will feel wrong. Everything in you will resist it, because you've been conditioned to believe that relationships create debt, that if someone was there for you once, you owe them forever, that if you've known someone for 10 years, those 10 years create obligation. They don't. They create history, and history is not the same as value. Machiavelli studied the Roman Empire extensively. He saw how Rome thrived when it made alliances based on strategic necessity and dissolved them when they became liabilities. He saw how Rome collapsed when sentimentality replaced strategy, when emperors kept generals out of loyalty rather than competence, when they maintained alliances out of tradition rather than utility. The lesson is clear. Nostalgia is not a strategy. The fact that you've been friends with someone for a decade doesn't mean they belong in your next decade. The fact that you were close in high school doesn't mean they're relevant to who you're becoming now. The past is data, not destiny. And the data is telling you something if you're willing to listen. So how do you actually execute this? How do you go from understanding the principle to implementing the protocol? Because understanding changes nothing. Execution changes everything. Step 1. The Energy Exchange Inventory. For the next 7 days, you track every social interaction you have, every text conversation, every phone call, every hangout, every dinner, every coffee. And after each interaction, you write down one thing. Did I leave this interaction feeling expanded or contracted? Expanded means you feel energized, inspired, challenged, seen, understood, sharpened. You walked away with new ideas, new perspectives, new possibilities. You feel bigger than you did before the interaction. Contracted means you feel drained, smaller, cynical, tired, frustrated, misunderstood. You walked away feeling like you gave more than you got. You feel like the interaction subtracted from you rather than added to you. This is not about whether the conversation was positive or negative. You can have a difficult, challenging conversation that leaves you feeling expanded because it pushed you to think differently. You can have a pleasant, agreeable conversation that leaves you feeling contracted because it was empty calories, socially satisfying, but nutritionally void. Track this for 7 days. You will see patterns. The same names will appear in the contracted column again and again. These are your liabilities, and you know it. You've always known it. You've just been unwilling to act on what you know because acting on it requires you to violate the social conditioning you've carried your entire life. Step 2. The Reciprocity Audit. Go back through the last 6 months of your relationships. Look at who initiates, who reaches out first, who makes the plans, who shows up, who invests. And here's the critical part. Look at when they show up. Do they show up when you're building, or do they only show up when you're celebrating? Do they invest when you're grinding, or do they only appear when you're winning? Most people have a contact list full of spectators who would never carry a brick while you're building the castle, but will gladly show up for the coronation. Machiavelli called these people auxiliary forces, borrowed strength that abandons you the moment the real battle begins. If they weren't there for the struggle, they don't deserve the success. This will hurt. You will discover that people you thought were close friends are actually acquaintances, that the person who always has time to celebrate your wins has no time to help you create them. Good. Pain is information. It's telling you that you've been operating with false data. You thought you had 10 friends. You actually have 2, or 1, or maybe none. And that clarity, as brutal as it feels, is the gift, because now you know. Now you can stop allocating resources to people who don't deserve them. Step 3. The future self-filter. This is the most powerful sorting mechanism you have. Close your eyes. I mean it. Close your eyes for 30 seconds and do this exercise. Visualize yourself 5 years from now. The version of you who has built the thing, won the thing, become the thing. You've executed on the goal. You've become undeniable. You're standing in that future, looking back at today. Now, from that vantage point, look at your current circle. Which of these people can you see in that future? Not, could they change? Not, maybe if they grew. Which of them, as they exist right now, can stand next to future you without looking absurdly out of place? Most of them can't. You know it. Future you is disciplined, focused, ruthless with their time. Current friend is chaotic, distracted, available to every distraction that presents itself. Future you has standards that are non-negotiable. Current friend thinks standards are judgmental. Future you is building an empire. Current friend is maintaining a lifestyle. The gap between who you're becoming and who they are is unbridgeable, not because they're bad people, because they're on a different trajectory. And trying to drag them onto your trajectory while they resist every step is like trying to swim across an ocean with an anchor tied to your ankle. You will drown, not because you're weak, because physics doesn't care about loyalty. Here's another manipulation tactic you need to recognize: the nostalgia weapon. This is what people deploy when they sense you're pulling away, when they feel the distance growing, when they realize you're changing and they're not. They weaponize your shared history. Remember when we used to? It's not like it used to be. What happened to us? You've changed. That last one is the most insidious. You've changed, said with disappointment. said like an accusation, said like you've betrayed some sacred pact by daring to evolve beyond who you were when you met them. And here's the trap. Part of you wants to prove them wrong. Part of you wants to show them you haven't changed, that you're still the same person, that growth doesn't mean abandonment. So, you regress. You slip back into old patterns. You perform the old version of yourself to maintain their comfort. This is how they keep you in the cage. Because here's what "you've changed" actually means. You're outgrowing me, and it's making me confront my own stagnation, and I need you to stop growing so I don't have to feel inadequate. The correct response to "you've changed" is simple. I know, and I'm not done yet. No apology, no justification, no reassurance that you're still the person they need you to be. Just acknowledgement and forward momentum. Machiavelli understood that change is the only constant in power dynamics. The prince who refuses to adapt dies. The leader who prioritizes nostalgia over necessity loses the throne. You cannot build the future while clinging to the past, and anyone who demands you do so is asking you to fail. So when they deploy the nostalgia weapon, and they will, you recognize it for what it is. A last-ditch attempt to pull you back into a version of reality that no longer serves you. You acknowledge the shared history, you appreciate what was, and then you keep moving, because the past is a place to visit, not a place to live. Most people will never do this. They'll watch this, nod along, feel inspired for 1 hour, and then do absolutely nothing. They'll keep the same circle, attend the same obligatory hangouts, respond to the same energy vampires, sacrifice the same dreams on the altar of other people's comfort, and 5 years from now, they'll be in the exact same place, wondering why nothing changed. You're not most people. You're here because you're ready to do what they won't. You're ready to sit with the discomfort of an empty contact list. You're ready to be misunderstood by people who worship at the altar of being there for your people. You're ready to be called cold, selfish, ruthless by people whose opinions mean nothing. Because while they're maintaining dead relationships, you'll be building an empire. While they're texting people back just to be nice, you'll be having strategic conversations that 10 times your thinking. While they're attending birthday parties for people they don't even like, you'll be in deep work mode, building skills they can't comprehend. They chose the herd. You chose the hunt. They chose comfort. You chose capability. They chose to be loved by many. You chose to be feared by all. This path isn't for them. It never was. This path is for the 1%, the outliers, the architects, the ones who looked at the social contract and said, "I didn't sign this." If you're still here, you're one of us. And we don't apologize for winning. This is where most people fail the test. They see the gap, they feel the incompatibility, and they make one of 2 mistakes. Either they try to change the friend, or they slow down their own growth to maintain the relationship. Both are suicide. You cannot change other people. You can inspire them. You can model a different way. You can offer them tools and frameworks and opportunities, but you cannot make them grow. Growth is a choice each person makes for themselves, in private, when no one is watching. And if they're not making that choice, all your effort is wasted. And slowing down your own growth to maintain compatibility with people who refuse to grow, that's not loyalty. That's cowardice. You're sacrificing your potential on the altar of other people's comfort. You're allowing their ceiling to become your ceiling. You're participating in your own destruction to avoid the temporary discomfort of being alone. Machiavelli would spit at this behavior. He wrote in chapter 25, "It is better to be impetuous than cautious, because fortune is a woman, and if you wish to keep her under it, is necessary to beat and ill-use her." He's not talking about abusing women. He's talking about dominating circumstance. You cannot negotiate with mediocrity. You cannot be polite to the forces trying to keep you small. You must be willing to offend, disappoint, and abandon anyone who stands between you and your becoming. I know what you're thinking. But what if I'm wrong? What if I cut these people off and regret it? What if I need them later? These are the questions of someone who still believes in scarcity, someone who thinks the current supply of people in their life is all they'll ever have, someone who hasn't yet understood that the universe rewards decisiveness and punishes hesitation. Let me reframe this for you. What if you're right? What if these people are exactly the anchors you think they are? What if keeping them costs you the next 5 years of progress? What if you look back at 50 years old and realize you sacrificed your potential to protect people who wouldn't have done the same for you? The risk of the purge is temporary loneliness. The risk of keeping them is permanent mediocrity. Which risk are you willing to take? Machiavelli faced this exact choice when he was exiled from Florence. He could have spent his time trying to maintain his old political relationships, writing letters, begging for favors, staying connected to a world that had rejected him. Instead, he cut the cord completely. He disappeared into the countryside. He spent his days reading the ancients, Livy, Plutarch, Tacitus, and his nights writing, alone, in obscurity, with no support system, no network, no safety net. And in that isolation, he wrote The Prince, the book that would outlive every person who exiled him, the book that would influence kings, conquerors, revolutionaries, and presidents for 500 years. He didn't write it with the help of his friends. He wrote it because he no longer had any. This is the paradox. The friendship purge is not the end of connection. It's the beginning of the right connections. Because when you remove the people who are wrong for you, you create space. Physical space in your calendar, mental space in your attention, emotional space in your capacity, for people who are right for you. But you cannot attract those people while you're still cluttered with the wrong ones. High-value people can sense when someone is unavailable, distracted, or burdened by low-value relationships. They won't engage. They won't invest. They'll move past you to find someone who has created space for them. So, the purge is not isolation for isolation's sake. It's strategic clearing. You're not becoming a hermit. You're becoming selective. And selectivity is the foundation of power. Here's what becomes possible when you execute the friendship purge correctly. You wake up and your calendar is empty. Not empty because you're lonely. Empty because you've removed every obligation that doesn't serve your mission. Every coffee meeting with someone who drains you. Every dinner with someone who doesn't understand you. Every phone call with someone who wants to gossip about people you don't care about. The emptiness feels terrifying at first. You'll have the urge to fill it immediately, to reach back out, to apologize, to say you were going through something and you're sorry for being distant. Don't. That urge is withdrawal. You were addicted to the dopamine of social validation, even from people who provided no actual value. And like any addiction, the body craves it even after the mind knows it's poison. Sit in the emptiness. Let it be uncomfortable. Let it be boring. Let it be lonely. Because on the other side of that discomfort is something most people never experience: uncontaminated focus. The ability to think your own thoughts without them being filtered through other people's opinions. The ability to pursue your own goals without having to explain or justify them to anyone who doesn't understand. Machiavelli spent years in this space, exiled, alone, powerless, and he used that powerlessness to become more powerful than any of the princes he advised. Because while they were managing court politics and maintaining alliances, he was studying the patterns that govern all politics, all alliances, all power. He had time, he had focus, he had silence. And in that silence, he heard himself clearly for the first time. This is what the purge gives you. Not loneliness, clarity, the ability to hear your own voice, the one that's been drowned out your entire life by the noise of other people's expectations, judgments, doubts, and limitations. Now, here's what happens next. You start winning. Not because you're suddenly more talented, because you're no longer carrying dead weight. You're moving faster, executing harder, making decisions with more precision, because you're not running them through a committee of people who don't understand what you're building. The business starts growing, the body starts transforming, the skill starts sharpening, and people notice. They always notice. Success is loud, even when you're trying to be quiet about it. And then they come back. The friends you cut off, the ones who didn't reach out for months, the ones who were too busy to support you when you were grinding. Suddenly, they're in your DMs. They're texting. They're commenting on your posts. They want to grab coffee. They want to catch up. They've been thinking about you. This is your final test. Not the test of isolation, the test of victory. Because the person you were before the purge would have welcomed them back with open arms, would have been so grateful for the attention, the validation, the sense that you're not alone anymore. Would have convinced yourself that they're coming back because they genuinely care, because they always believed in you, because they're your real friends. They're not. They're coming back because you have something now. Status, resources, success, proof that you were right and they were wrong. And proximity to you makes them feel like they're winning too. Machiavelli called this the behavior of the fox, adapting to circumstances to survive. They weren't around when you were the lion fighting wolves, but now that you're the lion sitting on the throne, they want to be in the castle. You will smile, you will be polite, and you will keep them at the gate. Because you remember. You remember who was there at 3 a.m. when you were building in silence. You remember who texted first. You remember who showed up without being asked. And these people? They weren't there. They don't get to rewrite history. They don't get to insert themselves into your narrative. They don't get access to the version of you they didn't help build. This is not cruelty. This is integrity. Now let me teach you something Machiavelli would never say publicly, but absolutely practiced privately. How to use the friendship purge as a power move. Once you've executed your purge and started winning, you become a scarce resource. People who ignored you will suddenly want access. Most people make one of two mistakes here. They either let everyone back in, weak, or they shut everyone out completely, wasteful. The Machiavellian does neither. The Machiavellian creates tiers. Tier 1, the inner council. 3 to 5 people maximum. These people get full access. Your time, your strategy, your vulnerability, your resources. They earned it. They were there when the room was empty. They carried bricks when you were building. They texted first when you went dark. They invested without expecting immediate return. This tier is sacred. It's protected. It's non-negotiable. These are the only people who get to see behind the curtain. Everyone else sees the performance. Tier 2. The strategic alliances, 10 to 15 people. These people have specific value you need: skills, connections, resources, knowledge. They get transactional access. You help them, they help you. No deep friendship, no emotional intimacy, no pretense of loyalty beyond utility. You don't hate them, you don't distrust them. You simply understand that the relationship exists because it serves both parties. The day it stops serving both parties, it dissolves. No hard feelings. This is where most of your professional network lives. This is where collaborators, mentors, industry contacts reside. They're valuable. They're important. But they're not inner circle. They don't get your 3 a.m. phone calls. They don't get your vulnerability. Tier 3, the observers. Everyone else. These people get performance access only. They see your wins. They see your results. They see the curated version of your life that you choose to display publicly. They think they know you. They don't. They're the audience, not the cast. They're spectators, not stakeholders. They serve a specific purpose in your ecosystem: social proof. Here's the dark part. Pay attention. You actively cultivate Tier 3 to create perceived value for Tier 2 acquisition. When high-value people, potential strategic alliances, see that you have an audience of observers, they perceive you as valuable. They see social proof. They see influence. They see someone worth aligning with. The observers serve a function. They're the crowd that makes you look like a leader worth following. Machiavelli did this exact thing with The Prince itself. He wrote it for Lorenzo de' Medici, a Tier 2 strategic alliance attempt. He was trying to get back into political favor, but he made the book's ideas known publicly, Tier 3, to demonstrate his intellectual value. The observers, future readers, political philosophers, students of power, created the perception that Medici would be foolish not to utilize such a strategic mind. You do the same. You post the wins publicly. Tier 3 sees it. They engage. They comment. They share. They create the perception of influence. And the right people, the Tier 2 prospects, the people with actual value to offer, they notice. They reach out. They want strategic alliance. Meanwhile, your inner council remains completely invisible. Tier 1 is never mentioned, never photographed, never acknowledged publicly, because that's the real power base. That's the fortress. And fortresses don't advertise their vulnerabilities. This is how you weaponize the purge. You don't just remove liabilities. You create a selection mechanism that attracts assets while filtering out parasites. You build a social architecture where every tier serves a specific strategic function. This is the architecture of power. This is how you maintain relationships that serve you rather than drain you. This is how you build an empire on the bones of dead friendships. The friendship purge is not a one-time event. It's a permanent protocol. Every 6 months, you audit your circle. Every year, you execute removals if necessary. The tiers are not static. They're curated. And curation requires the willingness to say no to people who want in but haven't earned it. Machiavelli wrote, "A wise prince should never remain idle in peaceful times, but industriously make good use of them, so that when fortune changes, she may find him prepared to resist her blows. Your peaceful times are now. After the purge, before the next wave of people try to crowd back in, use this time to fortify, build standards, create filters, design protocols for who gets access to you, under what conditions, and for how long. You are not a public park, you are a private estate. And private estates have gates, guards, and guest lists. Stop letting everyone in just because they knocked. Stop feeling guilty about having standards. The version of you that exists 5 years from now, the one who built the empire, who became undeniable, who mastered the discipline of power, that person is looking back at you right now. And they're begging you to do one thing: let go. Let go of the people who stopped growing. Let go of the guilt you feel about prioritizing yourself. Let go of the fantasy that you can save everyone. You can't save everyone, but you can save yourself. And sometimes saving yourself requires you to be the villain in someone else's story. So be the villain. Let them call you cold. Let them call you selfish. Let them call you cruel. Because while they're busy assigning labels, you'll be busy building the life they said was impossible. The prince had no friends, only assets and liabilities. He didn't justify it. He simply understood that power requires clarity, and clarity requires ruthlessness, and ruthlessness requires the willingness to be alone when being together costs too much. You are the prince now. Your circle is your kingdom. And kingdoms fall when the ruler is too weak to exile the traitors and too sentimental to execute the parasites. Don't let your kingdom fall. The purge begins now. Right after this video, you know exactly who needs to go. Their name is in your head right now. You can feel it in your gut. The vampire who drains you, the anchor who resents your growth, the spectator who's pleasant but useless. And you have a choice. Watch this video and do nothing, or open your phone and start purging. Most people will choose comfort. They'll keep the anchors. They'll feed the vampires. They'll perform for the spectators. And they'll wonder why nothing ever changes. You're not most people. You're one of us. The architects, the outliers, the Machiavellians, the ones who build empires in silence and let the results do the talking. The purge begins now. You've learned the first law of power. Your circle is your ceiling, and most people in your circle are holding the ceiling down. You've learned that Machiavelli didn't collect friends. He collected leverage. You've learned that every person in your life is either an asset or a liability, and neutral doesn't exist. You've learned how to audit, how to categorize, how to execute the purge with surgical precision. But here's what we haven't discussed yet: the specific archetypes, the 3 types of toxic friends that are currently destroying your potential. Because not all liabilities look the same. Some are obvious vampires, draining you visibly. Others are subtle anchors, holding you back so gently you don't even notice until you try to rise and realize you can't. And then there are the spectators, the most insidious of all, because they appear supportive while providing nothing of substance. In the next chapter, we're going deeper. We're going to dissect these 3 archetypes in detail. We're going to show you exactly how they operate, what psychological tactics they use, and how to identify them before they embed themselves so deeply in your life that removal requires surgery. They're in your phone right now, and they're betting you won't have the courage to remove them. Let's prove them wrong.